His Excellency Miguel Angel Ramirez, the Ambassador of Cuba in India, is one of our guests, is our distinguished guest of honor of the day. He has always been a friend of India, and we are really grateful to His Excellency for his distinguished presence here. Let me now have the privilege of inviting His Excellency Miguel Angel Ramirez to deliver his address. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Honorable Minister Kiran, all the distinguished dignitaries on the dais, distinguished guests. I believe a lot of you would be very interested to know of whatever you have been reading on the media, particularly the corporate media, of what's going on in Cuba these days. There are lots of talks about reform, whatever. So I would like to give you a fresh information, and I will try to concentrate mainly on the issue of a state-owned enterprise. Of course, I would like to make a small introduction. It's not the same when you talk about state-owned enterprise in a socialist country where most or almost all the means of production are in the hands of the people as a public sector, as when you talk about a public sector state-owned enterprise in the middle of a capitalist society. So probably some of my comments would raise some flags, but I would like you also to understand the context in which I'm talking about. The Cuban president has just announced the 6th Congress of the Cuban Communist Party in April next year that will focus on the solutions to the economic problems, the updating of the Cuban socialist model, and I would like to reiterate the concept updating. There is no reform or not deleting, it's just updating the socialist model. And will set the guidelines for the economic and social lives of the party and the revolution. Between 1997 and 2009, variation in the prices in exports and imports produced a net loss to the country of more than $10 billion in relation to 1997 levels. On average, the purchasing power of goods exports deteriorated 15%. In addition, the country experienced the intensification of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade that continuously, for a period of half a century, has been imposed by the United States. Situation which has not changed with the current country administration and which has meant heavy losses of more than $700 billion in more than 50 years. Climatic phenomena in the period caused heavy damage to the economy. The losses caused by 16 hurricanes from 1998 till 2008 are considered to be more than $20 billion, and those due to drought in more than $1 billion between 2003 and 2005. You must add the corresponding effect in the years 2009 and 10 yet to be quantified. I'm giving all this information for you to understand that any economy has to live under their own sources of income. Sometimes we have gone beyond that, and that has implied that we have indebted ourselves. Since 2005, the economy showed limitations to address the deficit in the balance of payments, bank transfers abroad, and the high level of maturity of the debt, situations that meant a great tension in the handling of the economy. This led to the need to introduce various measures, which are, I would refer to them, strengthening of the institutional framework, including the reorganization of the state and the government. I would like to comment that I'm very happy of the presentation of Professor Sundaram, because some of the inefficiencies and of the problems that we are facing are explained by him in his presentation. Sorry, let me close this. Emphasis on the concept that the economy plan must conform to the available resources. This is very important effect. I mean, we have been working, we have had a very strong internationalist program abroad, carrying out a very strong social program at home, and sometimes we have gone abroad aboard our resources. Start of an important group of industrial investment of a strategic nature concerning the future development of the country. In order to ease the burden for the state in some services that are offered, some experiments started, such as replacements of canteens and other workers' transport modalities, lease of barbershops, hairdressers, and taxis to employees in these activities. What all this meant is that we are taking strong measures to move to the cooperative sector, not losing the property, but renting the property to cooperatives and individuals in small sectors where the state-owned enterprise have proven to be inefficient. In order to search for sources of alternative financing to stop the industry process of decapitalization and productive infrastructure of the country. Eliminate the inflated payrolls in all areas of the economy and produce a restructuring of employment, including non-state formulas, by applying labor and wage treatment to the interrupted worker in order to eliminate paternalistic procedures. Indeed, in a country like ours, where most of the factories, companies are state-owned, we have suffered during all these years of a paternalistic attitude in which a company that would require 100 workers would have 150, and therefore the productivity of jobs would have diminished so much that it's not possible to keep the company running. Therefore, we have introduced a process of a disposability of workers. This is a very interesting process. It's not done in the traditional capitalist way. There is a commission in which the manager, the workers, everybody is involved to decide who of those workers is the less competent to keep on working on the factory. And those would be provided alternatives for jobs and some payment during some months. That's why there is another process that is going on, which is to open alternatives for self-employment and for small businesses. Increase labor productivity, improve discipline and level of wage motivation and incentives, eliminating egalitarianism in distribution and redistribution income mechanisms. We have given an important emphasis to say that socialism is providing equal opportunities, but not providing equal incomes to people. Those who work, who provide, who contribute the most to society, they have the right to earn more. We have, in the past, we have been suffering from egalitarianism attitudes that have affected our incomes. It will be necessary to remove undue gratuities and excessive personal subsidies. And in that sense, I have to mention that for the last, since almost the time of the revolution, we have established in Cuba the equivalent of a PDS, of a public distribution scheme of India. That will disappear on the long run. And instead of subsidizing products, which is what is happening now, we will subsidize the weaker sections of society. It doesn't make sense to subsidize a farmer who produces beans and sells the beans to the state at $10 a kilo and then gives him in a subsidized manner the same beans at 10 cents a kilo. So now we will concentrate ourselves on subsidizing weaker sections instead of subsidizing the prices of the products. Give greater powers and the frameworks of the plan to enterprises. So as part of the strategies, the economic policy in the new phase will correspond to the principle that only socialism is able to overcome difficulties and to preserve the revolution conquest. And in the update of the economic model, planning will prevail over market economy. The economic policy will emphasize that socialism is that the equal rights and equal opportunities for all citizens, but not egalitarianism. Socialist planning will be central, and at the same time, it must transform its methodological and organizational aspects to accommodate new forms of management and direction of the national economy. And not only that, in the new scheme, planning will also include non-state sector actors. We will plan them as well. The management model should recognize and encourage besides the socialist state company, which is the main form in the national economy, mixed capital companies, cooperative, lessees of lands, lessors of establishments, the self-employed workers, and other forms which could contribute to improve the efficiency of the social work and which would be providing alternatives for those workers who will be not working anymore in the public sector. In the new forms of non-state management, ownership concentration in legal or natural persons shall not be permitted. For that, we are strengthening the fiscal and tax regime in Cuba, which has been very weak for almost 50 years. Therefore, most of the income has come in the past mainly from the public sector companies, while the contribution of the society as a whole has been very minimal. Now it's going to be strengthened, and the fiscal and tax regime will be wider. And therefore, it would contribute to eliminate disparities in the income in society. There will be a gradual process of separating the state functions and business so that business should run more efficiently. Increased powers to enterprises shall be associated with elevation of responsibility on the control of the material and financial resources that they handle. Faculties will be clearly defined, as well as the financial instruments to be used by companies to manage, organize, and make the production of goods and services. The companies decide and manage their capital and investment to the limit provided for in the plan and according to the regulations laid down. State enterprises that steadily show losses which may not honor obligation with its assets or show negative results in financial audits regularly, insufficient working capital in their financial statements shall be subjected to a process of liquidation. It doesn't say that it's going to, they are going to be privatized. They are going to be liquidated. And the assets of that company will be distributed in other companies or will be part of the budget. The concept is that there will not be any company without being profitable. The companies, as a rule, will not receive budget financing for productions of goods and services. Undertakings will be allowed to create funds from their earning after taxes and other commitments have been completed with the state for development, investment, and the encouragement of workers. The income of workers in state enterprises shall be linked to the final results obtained. Subsidies, in the past it used to happen that there was a failed state company and still the salaries were very high. So now, as an encouragement to increase productivity and profitability, the salaries of the workers will be connected to the result of the factory itself. Subsidies for losses are eliminated. Companies will provide part of the utilities after tax to create a fund for compensation for financial imbalances in the management of the organization. Budgeted units, because we have to differentiate in the Cuban system, there should be budgeted units, state-owned enterprises who cater the needs of the people, like health care units, educational facilities. Those are budgeted units. As well as other tasks such as the delivery of health services and education. Social objects are not assigned to them, but obligations and powers. The number of budgeted units will be reduced until the minimum number that ensure compliance with the assigned roles, where the most important criterion will be maximum saving of staff and the state budget in financial and material resources. No budgeted units will be created to provide productive services or for the production of goods. I mean, the state, the government, the budget will not contribute for the creation of state-owned units that will generate profits. The price system shall be subject to a comprehensive review that makes it possible to correctly measure the economic facts, encourage efficiency, increase exports and import substitution, eliminating subsidies and undue gratuities. The centralization of the determination of policies and the planned level of prices of products and services that the state is interested to regulate shall be maintained. In the foreign trade, we will prioritize the export of professional services, the sale of projects or technological solutions over sending individual workforce, implement external marketing solutions and computer application programs. We will develop and implement the strategy to ensure new markets for the export of products of the medical, pharmaceutical industry and medical services. I want to stop here because I want to reiterate that we do believe that the state-owned enterprises can excel. And an example of that is the biotechnological sector in Cuba. In less than 10 years, we are now exporting more than $500 million of vaccines and pharmaceutical products. Attain rationality in the importing countries management through the reorganization of enterprises engaged in foreign trade. Foreign investment, this is also important because it connects with state-owned companies. Continue fostering the participation of foreign capital as a complement to the effort of the national investor, I mean the state, in those activities which are of interest of the country, in correspondence with the economic and social development in the medium and long-term projections. Ensure that while attracting foreign investments, various objectives are met, such as access to managerial methods, advanced technologies, diversification and expansion of export, import substitution, the contribution of external medium and long term for the construction of the production of objective. What this means is that we will only go for a joint venture with the foreign capital whenever we need three things or one of three things. Whenever we need capital, we need technology, know-how, or whenever we need a market. If we have the three things, then there is no need for us to go for the foreign capital. We will do it on our own because they are just a complement. They are not the most important part of the Cuban model. I would like also to comment on a very interesting phenomenon that is appearing, and it's called the grand national companies. This should be differentiated from transnational companies. In the process of integration in Latin America through the ALBA, the Bolivarian alternative of the Americas, now there are state-owned companies, government companies of different countries who are doing a joint venture. Just for instance, the oil refinery in Cuba is a grand national company between Venezuela and Cuba. Or the fishing fleet, it's a grand national project between Cuba, Venezuela, Ecuador, and the Caribbean nations. In the social policy, I would like to reiterate that we will contribute preserving the achievements of the revolution, such as access to health care, education, culture, sports, recreation, social welfare, and protection through social assistance to persons in need. We will rescue the role of work as a fundamental way to contribute to the development of society and to the satisfaction of personal and family needs. In the area of employment and wages, we will facilitate that the wage measures guarantee that everyone receives according to their work, and it should generate products and services with quality. I have to mention to you, Cuba is working with a dual monetary system. One is a hard currency, the Cuban convertible peso, and the other is the local peso. The local people, the workers, they earn their salary in the Cuban pesos, which is 24 of them is just one convertible peso or dollar. So you can understand that somebody receiving some remittances from abroad, or just a bellboy in a hotel, can earn more than a scientist or a doctor in Cuba. So these are some of the disparities that we want to eradicate, and for that we need to strengthen the role of the salary in the people. Prioritize implementation of wage increases, increase to jobs that generate foreign currency or produce savings in the production of food and other essential consumer goods, and development investment process, modify the structure of employment, reduce inflated payrolls, and expand the work in the non-state sector. These are more or less the guidelines. My presentation has been based on the draft guidelines that has been circulated among the whole population in Cuba and whose discussion started on the 1st of December. So it's a fresh affair and will last until 31st of January. After the discussion of these guidelines, there will be a paper that will be presented to the Congress for the future of the economic update of the Cuban model. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. C. Dibagaran, the Honorable Minister for Civil Supplies, Government of Kerala, is one of our distinguished guests. Let me request him to address the gathering.
Your Excellency, Angel Ramesh, Ambassador of Cuba, Ms. John Mathai, Mr. T. Balakrishnan, Professor Prabhat Patnaik, Minister Elamala Karim, Jomo Kame Sundaram, Minister A.K. Padmanabhan, President of Central Trade Unions, T.J. Chandrajudan, General Secretary of Revolutionary Socialist Party, Advocate Tampan Thomas, President of Hindu Mazdoor Sabha, Dipankar Mukherjee, Secretary Center of Indian Trade Unions, Mr. Alkesh Kumar, and my colleague and Minister N.K. Pramachandran, and all the distinguished guests, my dear friends. I'm not going to take much of your time. I prepared a speech and I humbly submit in the conference. Besides, I will say a few words so that you don't fear about I am going to take much of time. See, in our state, we have a very long experience about the industrial attempts for the industrial development. Really, it started, we remember that 1957, the first communist government came into power. From there, that date onwards, the people of Kerala is very much interested to develop the industrial scenario in our state. Now it is unbelievable. Even during that time, our great leader, then the Chief Minister E.M.S. Namboodiripad, he brought one of the monopoly house, Indian monopoly house, Birla, in the state. And we provide all the facilities, including much of land, cheap labor. That it was the first attempt to start a big industry in Malabar area, that is Mavu rayons. During the period of Achyuta Menon, their government tried their level best to bring number of modern industries in the state, including electronics industry. We remember that it was the first time a state brought the electronics industry in a public sector. During that period, we reorganized all the traditional industries under the cooperative society sector, cooperative sector. Then the government declared all the facilities for industrialists, whether they are in private sector or public sector. So for the last several years, a new idea evolved. There was the great disaster for us. All the public enterprises are liability for the government. So, dismantle these public enterprises, retrench the poor workers, and sell out all these land, building, everything. The privatization is the product of globalization. Privatization doesn't mean that the private sector, but it is public sector, government sector wanted to be converted to private hands. As a labor leader, I am very proud that we fought like anything. The labor movement of India, actually they fought heroically to oppose all sorts of privatization. Now the situation is more or less changing throughout the world. Privatization became a total flop. Now this conference, I do appreciate Elamaran Karim and his team to bring a role model for the whole country. Here, say small states, small public sector enterprises, they became profitable enterprises. When we came into power, I have seen, and most of you are my colleagues, trade union leaders are here. The entire working class in the Kerala states, we fought against the retrenchment. We fought against the volunteer retirement scheme. We fought against the compulsory retirement scheme. And we demanded the government take the workers in confidence, give them a hearing. They know how to manage, they know how to turn these loss enterprises in a profitable line. Bureaucracy had nothing to do with this.